Since Shadowlands Alpha started a few days ago and I haven't slept at all, I wanted to throw together a short video outlining the Kyrian class abilities that you can obtain. Kyrians, of course, are one of the 4 covenants that you'll be able to choose from in Shadowlands. Follow my Twitch, you animals! After questing for roughly 30 minutes, you are given your Kyrian ability for your class on Alpha, and if you do this 12 times, not only does your virginity grow back, but you also have all 12 class abilities at your testing pleasure. Let's check them out. Paladins have one of the strongest Kyrian Covenant abilities of all the classes in my opinion. It's a 1-minute cooldown that shoots out an iconic ability based on your spec for up to 5 targets, those being of course Avenger Shield for Prot, Judgment for Ret, and Holy Shock for Holy, no surprise there. And yes, this includes all of their effects for silences, bounces, debuffs, glimmer debuff, etc. Its short cooldown makes it line up frequently with other cooldowns like Avenging Wrath. And also now that all specs have moved back to Holy Power as a main resource, it builds 1 Holy Power per target hit, so you can cap out 5 Holy Power instantly using Divine Toll. Overall, really good stuff, especially if you like auto-running everywhere as a Paladin. Demon Hunters get another Sigil as their Kyrian ability, and it fits the role well, adding another AoE hit on a 1-minute cooldown that also generates 3 soul fragments. Important to note that more enemies don't spawn more fragments, it's always 3 no matter the target amount. It's nice to have another button added to Havoc's already bloated rotational roster of 3 buttons. A nice little perk for Vengeance as well is that the talent Quicken Sigils does affect Elysian Decree, reducing its cooldown and reducing the time to trigger, but this sounds like fun and will likely be removed. Furthermore, in the current world of adding soft and hard AoE caps to certain spells and abilities, it's good to know that Elysian Decree is uncapped for AoE, but frankly, even this won't be enough to stop the edgy Twilight lovers from eventually picking the Venthyr regardless of what any other Covenant ability does. Although the cooldown for monks is on the higher end for their Kyrian ability, Weapons of Order, which sits at 2 minutes, you are given a nice chunky duration of 30 seconds for the buff, granting you 15% mastery across all 3 specs and resetting an important spec ability while empowering it. For Brewmasters, your Keg Smash CD is instantly reset, and it also makes your Keg Smashes within the 30-second buff window add an 8-second debuff to all targets hit, making them take 5% increased damage from your attacks, stacking up to 5. The cooldown on Keg Smash naturally allows you to stack this to 5 before your 30-second buff wears off, allowing you to blow your load with a nice big exploding keg, should you be spec'd into it. Windwalkers of course have the Rising Sun Kick reset, and Rising Sun Kick also gives you a 5-second buff that reduces the cost of your chi abilities by 1. However, the buff portion is not working on Alpha right now, so it's hard to test. Not to be forgotten, like they often are, Mistweavers have their Essence font reset with the added perk that on channel start and finish, it heals targets for a fairly sizable amount, making this AoE heal even more solid right now, especially as the AoE heal perk does not seem to have an AoE cap. Death Knights get a 1-minute baseline cooldown single target dot that also reduces the target's damage done to them by 5% for the duration, which is great for blood, but it'll probably still have its uses for Frost and Unholy. While it doesn't have an AoE component, it does deal a fair chunk of damage during its duration, and the main perk is that while it is active, any rune spent reduces its cooldown by 4 seconds per rune spent. Even with the dumpster haste starter values on Alpha currently, it was pretty easy to have this ability down to 20 seconds or less by the time it wore off, allowing for high uptime. There is no target cap listed, so in theory with enough haste or rune return, you may be able to get 2 of them out at once, or perhaps it will just replace the active one, but I wasn't able to test this theory with the current loadout on my Blood DK on Alpha because the gear was just too low eye level. I really hope that in future they consider some kind of addition of a system where maybe eye level can naturally increase when it drops with a proc chance, something forging, titan something, I don't know. Either way, it's a good idea and we should write that one down for later. Warriors. Hot dog, we have a wiener. Spear of Bastion for Warriors is an absolute monster. It's a small radius AoE targeted ability that does an immense amount of damage on impact and then tethers enemies to the location, similar to Ursul's Vortex for 4 seconds, while doing a hefty dot during that time. Furthermore, not only is it on the shorter side of cooldowns for Kyrian abilities, sitting at 60 seconds, but it also generates 25 rage for your trouble spending that precious GCD. This beauty might just make you forget that you'll never again hit a 6th target as Fury. Warlocks. You get a juiced up dot known as Scouring Tithe for your Kyrian ability. Not only does it sound like a horrible STI, but in typical Warlock fashion it can be fairly powerful. But you know what? It's about time Warlocks got a strength increase, they're just always so undertuned. This ability has a modest 40-second cooldown dealing moderate damage on hit, and then applying a dot on your target for 18 seconds. If the enemy survives the dot, the cooldown is instantly reset, allowing you to apply it again. But if the enemy dies with it, you are given 5 full soul shards. Not too shabby at all, and it can help keep the flow going through a Mythic Plus run as well. Now, I know what you Destrolocks are thinking, and the answer is no. You cannot havoc it, you overpowered, dot-hungry, greedy fuck! Shamans get another totem. What a surprise. I haven't had a shocker that big since I found Enhancement was a spec and not a breed of common house cat. Now, in all fairness, Vesper Totem is actually pretty solid, sitting at 60-second cooldown with a 30-second duration, allowing you to recast the totem within that 30-second window to replace it on the move. It essentially bolsters your next 3 damage and healing spells, 3 of each that is, for a total of 6, making the totem radiate damage or healing to the nearest 6 enemies or allies based on the spell type. A nice little tool that allows for some cross-pollination of support from DPS and damage from healers. Might be a nice tool to have in some higher end runs, we'll have to see how it's tuned. Radiant Spark is a nice little burst tool for mages with one of the shortest Kyrian ability cooldowns of 30 seconds. It does a moderate arcane nuke and then debuffs the enemy for 8 seconds with a light dot component. During this debuff, they take 10% increased damage from your direct damage spells, stacking up to 4. After the 4th stack, however, it is consumed and the next spells are no longer amplified, even if it's within the 8-second debuff window. While this makes for some fun burst play with frequent access, there are some frustrations as well, as things like Flurry for Frost consumes or adds a stack per hit, instantly putting your stacks up to 3, and the short 8-second debuff duration makes it hard to combo with some slower spells sometimes, like Frostbolts into Glacial Spike due to their high cast time. It's possible Arcane and Fire will be better able to take advantage of this with Arcane Blast quick cast, especially with Presence of Mind or Hot Streak procs, but it may need some fine tuning in the end nonetheless. After apologizing for playing a Hunter, you're given Resonating Arrow with a solid 1-minute CD that targets a fairly large area for 10 seconds, granting you 30% increased crit chance against targets within that area and allowing you to damage them through line of sight, which will be nice for PvP and perhaps might have some niche PvE situations such as Ashara, the best fight that no one liked. Now that we've covered all the good and fun abilities for classes, including the one maybe pile from Hunters, let's talk about Druids. Druid Kyrian ability is currently broken on Alpha, and just like a Feral Druid trying to get into a group, it just doesn't work. The intent is to have a role-based symbiosis, granting the Druid a 1-minute CD, 10-second duration buff that changes based on role. Tanks will share 40% of incoming damage from their target, DPS will buff primary stat of their target based on damage done, and healers will essentially mimic a beacon, replicating 50% of healing done to their target, all while whatever role they target gives them the accompanying role benefit as well. Hopefully they fix this one up soon, but frankly, it's a little boring, especially for those of us that remember Symbiosis and how it varied back in the day.
It's been 84 years.
Who could forget the Rogue Kyrian ability? I wish I could. Rogues have an interesting Kyrian ability that may prove nice in PvP, but it's quite underwhelming in PvE. Echoing Reprimand has a 45-second cooldown and adds 3 combo points to your target at the cost of 30 energy, dealing moderate damage. You're then buffed with Echoing Reprimand, which has no duration and can roll anywhere from 1 to 4. The idea is that your next damaging combo point spender that spends the same amount of combo points that matches the number you rolled will do damage as if it were a 7 combo point hit. So if your Echoing Reprimand rolls a 2, you can spend a 2 combo point Eviscerate and it will damage the target as if it were 7 combo points. It will consume your Echoing Reprimand buff, and that's it. A fairly underwhelming result for a 45-second cooldown. It also causes some frustrations as some specs have abilities that can multi-generate combo points and skip over your target number to consume your buff. Furthermore, the actual benefit can vary depending on your role, as spending 4 combo points to get a 7-point Mimic is much less impactful than rolling a 1 into a 7 combo point Mimic. It's a good thing, however, that this is the only RNG they've ever added to rogues, and as a result, we can adjust to this. Well, you know what they say, save the best for last. That certainly doesn't apply here when talking about Boon of the Ascended, the Priest Kyrian ability. When you're playing a Shadow Priest, which is never, this Kyrian ability replaces Mind Flay with Ascended Blast for 10 seconds, while doing the same for Smite for Holy and Disc Priests, and further allows you to cast Ascended Nova. Due to its 3-second cooldown, Ascended Blast can only be cast 4 times within the 10-second window, giving you a total of 16 Boon of the Ascended stacks, which results in a sizable 48% increase to the final splooge of Ascended Eruption, dishing out reasonable healing and damage to an uncapped amount of targets within 15 yards. This can be pushed out even further in large AoE situations with Ascended Nova, which unfortunately doesn't even work on Alpha right now. You just can't press the button. You're probably saying, well, Senor Sloot, this all sounds great, so why is Priest here in the bottom tier? Well, the problem lies in this ability's whopping 3-minute cooldown. Now, as WoW players, we're used to hearing it's too long, but the CD on Boon of the Ascended is nowhere near most of the other classes' Kyrian abilities, and it only lasts a measly 10 seconds. The next longest is Monk at 2 minutes, but it lasts 30 seconds at least. The potential design and output of this ability is certainly nothing to laugh at, but it needs to have its cooldown substantially reduced to be a considered and competitive option amongst the other Covenant choices for Priest. That does it for me, and back to Alpha I go. Hope you enjoyed our first Covenant class ability overview. There's lots more info incoming, especially as more Alpha content pours in on us like my monthly warm butter shower. If you have any questions, make sure to come hang out in my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/sloot. I stream frankly too much because I've been social distancing for the past 8 years. Oh yeah, and make sure to follow the channel and subscribe to keep up to date with all of the new info, or you'll be haunted with AoE capping on all of your abilities.